Now we'll have the Q&A session. I invite the speakers and their technology partners to join the panel. Paul A. Hollywood, a highly respected industry expert in asset management and an ARC analyst, will be controlling the mic and passing it around to you. So I'll start off with just a couple of questions. First to Brian. What industries does your solution play in? I'm sure you have other clients other than valve manufacturers. Could you talk a little bit about what industries or what other types of applications, however you characterize your customer base?
Okay, so we make software that's designed for subject matter experts and organizations to work more effectively with time series data. That's the broadest sense.
Okay.
And it's every aspect of working with time series data. Obviously, there's a focus on analytics. It's kind of the golden jewel these days, but we look at everything from data cleansing to data access to collaboration to documentation and annotation and everything else. So as a tool for subject matter experts, it's a great fit for Fisher. They're world-class subject matter experts on valves, and that's a prime case. Most of our business goes directly to end users, continuous and batch, so oil and gas, et cetera. But we also obviously work with OEMs and service companies. Right. And I think the interest here is largely around assets, but our solution is used at the low level, like level 1 and level 2 assets for transmitters and the rest, but also higher, like cat crackers or cokers or boilers, all the way up to measuring profitability and reliability and quality at the senior level.
Wow.
I would say out of all the different value propositions, though, one of the most regular we see has to do with assets and reliability management.
Okay.
So it's the subject matter expert focus can be applied to any of the assets, but I think valves is really one of the premier examples.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Right. Steve, a similar question for you. What kind of industries, and you may not characterize your customer base by industry, you may have another way to characterize it. How would you like to talk about where your product is applied?
So from a GE perspective, right, we're primarily an OEM of large equipment and have 20, 25 years of monitoring our equipment and generating service revenue from that. The company's taken the tact of building a standardized platform that can be used across asset types. Because even within GE, we've got medical equipment, locomotives, wind turbines, gas turbines, whatever it may be. So the way I actually characterize where we actually drive value is with customers that have fleets of distributed assets, where the actual collecting of the data is a challenge, and we can facilitate that with this sort of combination of low-cost edge computing devices and wireless or cellular connectivity that really has been expensive in the past, and we've now been able to make really very inexpensive. So you can collect hundreds of data points from a remote asset very inexpensively. And I think that to me is actually what's exciting about what's changing in the industry. And you showed that one chart where you had the people that were making semiconductors where it had $10 million assets, and now you're getting into people that have $10,000 or $25,000 assets. And that's really what we're seeing is that's being driven by the reduction in cost of doing the data collection through whether it be wireless sensors themselves or low-cost gateway devices that have compute resources, or in our case, we've even embedded the sort of gateway technology actually into our controllers. So there's no actual additional cost to get an asset connected to the cloud because the functionality is built in.
Very good. Thanks, Steve. Thank you. Yeah, questions from the audience, if we may.
Thanks. I have a question for Sean. I believe you mentioned something about looking forward to automating the data analysis. Do you have any time frame when that might be implemented? 2, 5, 10 years? And when it is implemented, do you think it's going to happen once the data is made it over to the subject matter experts and then migrate to the edge, or do you think it'll just start right at the edge?
Well, I don't know if we have an actual timeline for when that's going to be done, because I think it'll be continuous. You know, we're trying to do automation all the time, especially on the things that are easily understood today. And so I think some of that is probably already, we can call it already automated. It's just that it's at the subject matter expert level right now. But the idea is to push that down closer to the devices whenever possible. But, you know, as we come out with smarter ways of you know, assigning health to a valve or new products, I think it's going to continuously change. So I'd say the short answer is we've already done a little bit, but there's probably no end in sight with a lot of the things that we can do. Can you remind me of the second part of the question there? Sorry.
I was just wondering if this analysis or automated analysis would be done, you know, once the data has already been received by the SMEs, or if it'd be pushed to the edge right away.
Sure, and I think the answer there is it kind of depends on which data that we're looking at. The goal is to do as much of it locally as possible, and you know, save the SMEs for the more difficult things to analyze. But you know, that said, if we start looking at some higher frequency type data sets, you know, vibration, some of the acoustics, things like that we look at, we'll do what we can locally, just to save bandwidth and having to send it to the cloud or whatever. But sometimes it has to be transmitted and done remotely. So not a great answer, but it depends on what the data set is, and you know, our real goal is to automate as much as possible.
Can I just add something to that?
Go ahead.
So part of the main focus of the Seek software and the infrastructure is designed to enable this migration of expertise. There's algorithms out there that you've probably heard of for things like machine learning and artificial intelligence. And those are largely looking at mining more out of the data. What we're doing is mining people's heads. And when you do that, you want to encode it and automate it incrementally and push it as far out as it has to be performant. And I want to mention one other customer we have where they have initially these analytics running at the engineer's desktop. That's where it starts. And you're doing 10 a day. And then it gets automated more and it moves to the server and is doing, you know, 1,000 a day or 20,000 a day. And in that particular case, they ended up pushing stuff all the way to the edge where it was doing 1 million checks per system per day. And this migration is really important part of any fully evolved IoT strategy. It starts, though, with really getting the engineers fully engaged and taking their 20 years of experience and finding a way to codify it.
Good, thank you. Another question? I have one for Sarah, if I may. If you could talk just, you did a good job of talking about the application and what you monitor in the various plants. I just wanted to get an understanding of how the data gets from within the plant for the tank, for example, a tank farm you talked to, up to Predix. What's the communication path? How does it get from the equipment to the cloud and maybe back again?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually goes through the cell modem that on the mini field agent actually comes outfitted with it.
Okay.
And we can order that from the factory with that specification. But a lot of what we saw was we also went in and pulled data from their existing systems and we brought it into GE Predix. And it's a methodology called API Connect.
Okay.
That our developers do, and we actually go ahead and grab those related data sets in.
Right.
So now the clients can kind of get the holistic picture of what they're looking at. And they don't need to upgrade, they don't need to go buy new equipment or anything else. And I think that's truly the value of IoT, which excites
Excellent.
us.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Paula, go ahead.
This question is for Brian. Brian, you mentioned data cleansing. One of the things that I talk about sometimes when I'm presenting is the term garbage in, garbage out still applies. So I'll let you speak to that as well as the rest of the panel.
So I agree, garbage in, garbage out. Data cleansing for time series data is a particularly nasty problem. Every sensor is different. So what you want to be able to do is look at, have the person who is knowledgeable of the data source understanding how it's to be cleansed. if you leave the data cleansing to the requester of the data, they will destroy it, right? So you can easily ask through an historian you can look at some data and see a big gap and just decide to interpolate across, not realizing the equipment was turned off and coming to completely the wrong conclusion. So this has been a major focus of our platform, and the basic premise is that people who really understand the data source define how it is to be cleansed incrementally, and you can continually improve that. And then use that same methodology on any similar sensor, for example. And you keep the expert who's using the data, and the people who really understand the source data working on that side. And that's an important aspect of data cleansing. And the other thing I'd mention is that data cleansing doesn't have to be done initially up front. You can start your analytics right away and go back if you have a good system for it. You can go back and improve the input of the data as a second. You don't have to do this upfront design and say, let's get everything perfect and do all this work before we get any value. The analytics have value even if the data is dirty, but obviously it can have some dramatic effects, but you can do that either in parallel or secondary as an improvement. It doesn't have to be upfront.
Could I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Once you cleanse the data, and this is automatic data collection, I've always assumed that it stays cleansed. Is that true?
So I can speak to how our system works. The way our system works, the way typically it's done, let's say with Excel, is you pull some data out and you spend some time cleaning it, which involves calling people and annotating it and pulling sections out and the rest. And as a result, you end up with a set of data that's, let's say in Excel, that no one else can get to, let alone reapply it to the next time. It was a completely manual process.
Okay.
So in our system, you do all that cleansing on your screen interactively, and you can run back the history and see how it's working. And that immediately is applicable to all of time and as new data comes in. And the data cleansing, the clean version, is a different signal. So we'd never touch the raw data. So once you kind of establish it, it's done forever.
Okay.
And you never touch it again,
Right.
unless you want to, of course, improve the algorithm. And so that's data cleansing is important. I think most people who do it today take this kind of ETL approach, where you pull the data out, you clean it, and it's stuck there. So.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay.
I'd say just for us, I don't know if this counts as data cleansing, but sometimes, we've got multiple sensor streams coming in, even if they're all from the DVC. And sometimes, there's indications that one of those is giving you bogus data. And so sometimes for us, just correlating those multiple data source or, sensor sources can help us pinpoint if one of those signals doesn't make sense or not. So for us, sometimes it's just being able to put multiple values in context and make sure that they all make sense with each other.
Okay.
Because sometimes you get, kind of a false alarm, but it turns out that you just got a bad sensor reading or something.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. This is the public service announcement for the guys. We're about to go on a break. It's time to call your wives if you haven't already done so. It's Valentine's Day. Other than that, we're set up for a break. Enjoy. There's coffee, et cetera, in the technology center. Demo center. Oh, we're in lunchtime? That's right, yeah. God, forget that. Ready for lunch. Thank you.